Hi, welcome to another recent reads where I'll be talking about 3 more books this time. And before I begin, it is August, so that means it is Women in Translation Month, which is something I am very excited about. I have some titles lined up for myself to read, and I am very excited about diving into those books and share with you all what I think about those books. I'm also quite excited to see what other translated works by female authors that I could find out, learn more of from other creators, other booktube channels and bookstagram. So it's really exciting. I really love this bookish event, and because of that, I am also going to have 2 books in this video, which are translated works by female authors. So I'm really excited to share with you all about that as well. So another thing, for this recent reads, I found out that all 3 books that I'm going to talk about here, I coincidentally gave them 3 stars, all of them 3 stars on Goodreads. Now, I think this is where, star rating just sort of falls apart, because even though I gave these 3 books 3 stars, they aren't really adequate in expressing what I really thought about these books. And what I thought about these books are vastly different, because all these books are going to be quite different. So that's another thing I'm quite excited about in this recent reads, So I'm going to start with the first book, which is a translated work by a female author. This is People Like Them by Samira Sedira. This book was originally written in French. It was translated into English by Lara Vergnaud. And so this book is about a murder of 5 that happened in it's a novel about a murder of 5 that happens in a pastoral, sleepy, quaint French village. And right at the beginning, we learn who the murderer is. It's a young married man, one of the villagers. And so this book is mostly about why this man commits that murder. And the entire book is narrated by this murderer's wife named Anna. What I like about this book is that it sort of subverts my expectation as I read through it, and it did that a few times. Now, at the beginning, when I just first started reading this book, a few chapters in, I had this impression that this book was just gonna be like one of those that say, this murderer commits this heinous crime because this murderer has some kind of mental health issues. And I was like, I was a little bit annoyed, because I really didn't want the book to go on that direction, because that would be a very problematic direction. I've read books like that before and I didn't like them because of that. And I would say my expectation was kind of subverted when that didn't really happen. I know a lot of you guys would probably appreciate that this book does not treat mental health in a really wishy-washy way like that. So I'm just gonna say it right here, it doesn't do that, which is a great thing. And another great thing is that it goes into this territory where where the book begins to examine this murderer's prejudice and how it potentially contributes to him doing this act, this murder. And so that sort of leads to another aspect of this book, which is the setting. So the book is set in a French village that is homogeneously white, and the murdered family, the father happens to be a black man, and so the family is like a newcomer to this village. And so it sort of opens up this question whether the murderer, could the murderer might have committed a crime, partly because of the racial identity of this, of the father in that family. And it sort of leads to this interesting, I would say, exploration into that side of the murderer's motivation. Was he motivated by that, or was he not? Like, I'm not going to tell you guys how it is, but when you look at the title of this book, you know, it's People Like Them. You sort of have that, you know, potential implication whether that might play a role in this book. And regardless of whether you say, you know, whether you guess yes or no, I would say the book goes even deeper than that. It goes into even more, layered discussion on a person's motivation in committing a crime in general. So again, looking at the title, People Like Them, the first of my expectation on the title was probably how it relates to, you know, people's racial identity and how it relates to prejudice, right? But I feel like it has another layer to it as well, you know, like People Like Them, because this book is narrated by a person close to a murderer. It sort of leads to another, I would say, line of inquiry, where it opens up the questions of what does, or you know, what does the existence of criminals in our society tell about us, you know, the so-called non-criminals? Like, how can they act as some sort of mirror to who we are as a society in general? Like, are we culpable whenever someone commits a heinous crime? Those are the questions that this book is trying to tackle in a novelistic way, and I find that to be kind of interesting, considering the fact that this book is really short. In fact, I read it in one sitting. Well, 2 sittings. But I finished it within a day, so it was a really short book, but I felt like it was quite punchy as well. So yeah, this book is, I would say, it's a very, very interesting book. I really like that whole discussion on, you know, aside from how it explores the motivation of the murderer, I really like how it discusses the you know, how people in society in general has this sort of, I would say, nearly uncanny ability to affect one another, so much so that one person might be driven to do something unthinkable. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something that we think of consciously a lot, but it's entirely possible that an action of one person might lead to a change in circumstances of another person's life, and that might lead to another person's, you know, life being changed. So it could lead to all of this, like a train of changes that one cannot just simply predict. And one of the outcomes is that one person suddenly does something horrible. And so whose fault is it? This book sympathizes with criminals, but it does not condone their actions. So it only sort of ask the question, what is the society's role when a crime is committed? Because I feel like it is something that is quite relevant, like how we tend to see a lot of news in the media, like on TV and paper, like how someone commits a crime and they get caught, and then there's sort of like this line that is constructed either by us subconsciously or by media. There's this line that divides us and those people who got caught, and it's as if that we are like this really good people because we don't do what they did, and there are these monsters. But the problem is, or rather the question is, are we really that good? So that was like one of the questions this novel asks. So it's quite interesting. In terms of the storytelling, I would say it wasn't really punchy emotionally. In terms of ideas, it was punchy, but emotionally I didn't really feel like I was very invested into this book. Something that I realized is that with short books I tend to feel less invested, so maybe that's just the way it is. But overall I think this book is quite nice. I really recommend this for you guys. So moving on to the second book, I have a book by a Malaysian author, and it's called Tale of the Dreamer's Son. It's by Preeta Samarasan. So this book is about a commune, a group of people who lives in a big mansion in Malaysia, and the story takes place mainly in the 80s and also in at the present time. But the commune, this group of people, their story takes place in the 80s. So this commune is called Muhibah Center for World Peace. So Muhibah is a Malay word that translates sort of to togetherness. So it's kind of like this a place where people gather in spite of their differences, and since we're talking about Malaysia, in spite of their racial and religious differences. So the whole vibe of this commune is mostly about holding hands with each other, a lot of kumbaya. And central to this commune is a charismatic leader named Cyril Dragon. So one day, a Malay woman who is seeking shelter, she also has a son whom she gave birth out of wedlock. The woman's name is Salma, and the son's name is Reza. So Salma and Reza ends up at this commune, and quickly, as they settle down at the commune, Salma and Cyril, the leader, they form a relationship, and from this relationship, a son is born, and so this son would eventually become the narrator of this entire novel. And what this novel mainly is about is how various factors affect the lives of this son who is narrating this novel, how it really messes up his life. And I'm talking about so many things that messes up his life, from the general atmosphere between different races and different religions in Malaysia at the time, the political atmosphere in Malaysia, the excessive idealism of Cyril, the commune leader, the inability of his mother, Salma, to parent her children, and also basically the various human failings that the other residents in the commune exhibit towards one another. So basically, even though this commune is all about being united, in spite of differences, it's all about togetherness, there are plenty of drama in this commune. The people who live there, they don't really live in a way that is positive with one another. A lot of the characters in this book are really toxic. They are very petty, spiteful, manipulative to one another. I would say perhaps the leader, Cyril Dragon, is not as spiteful or petty as the other characters in this book, but his fatal flaw is that he is just way too idealistic. He is so idealistic that he is not aware of the general political and social atmosphere in Malaysia at that time for him to do that whole commune shenanigans, which honestly at that time and also up until today, that kind of stuff will never fly in Malaysia because of laws, basically, which is not something that I agree with, but that is the reality here in Malaysia. And talking about that, I really like how Preeta Samarasan injects commentary, really blunt commentary on the tense and taut racial relations in Malaysia and how it really affects everyone, not just on a political and social level, but also on a personal level, as is shown in this book, how this different tension causes this son's life, this narrator's life, his name is Yusuf, I forgot to mention that, how this narrator's life to be affected in such a way that he is robbed of a proper childhood. So plenty of things happen when he is a child because of his involvement with this commune and because of the how other characters just treat him because of their personal shortcomings and also because of where he finds himself. He finds himself in a state of limbo where he's born to a Malay woman, and so by the Malaysian constitution he has to be a Muslim, but then because he lives in this commune where the religious teachings are kind of different how, I'm not going to tell you, but they are kind of different. Because he lives in this commune and he was exposed to the teachings here, his religious inclination is different from how it is in the mainstream way. And later, other things that are going to happen to him will sort of crack him even more. And that the repercussion of those personal turbulence that he experienced, emotional turmoil because of that, would also be explored in the current in the present time. So yeah, I really like the social commentary on this. I also really like how this book is written in a way that sort of mimics Malaysian English speech, but not fully Malaysian English, because Malaysian English would definitely use much more loan words, borrowed words, and would literally just disrespect tenses. But there's definitely that tone and cadence of Manglish if you were to read this book. So I find it quite unique and fairly close to home as well. One particular thing I noticed about Preeta Samarasan is that she has this tendency or knack to write really petty, toxic characters. It happened in her first novel as well, Evening is the Whole Day, but I didn't finish that one because I thought that book was just way too flowery for me. But the way her characters are written, they're portrayed in such a way that is somewhat exaggerated. They are generally rotten to the core. It's as if that they don't really have much redeeming qualities. And it doesn't matter what the ages of the characters are. It doesn't matter whether they are old people, adults, children, teenagers. All of them are toxic and petty and spiteful in their own ways. And honestly, I think this sort of allows her writing to have this really unique voice, which is something that I really respect. I like writing that has this distinct and strong voice, and her writing definitely has that. Although, if you are looking for a book that has likable characters, I don't think this book is for you. This book's characters, I would say more than 90% of them are unlikable, and you can expect to not like them all the way until the end. Now, one thing about this book that I didn't particularly enjoy is that it is a little bit overwritten, just like its predecessor as well, but not as bad. But it is still there. Generally, I would say a lot of hyphenated adjectives are used here. Once in a while, if you use that, it's fine, but I think it's used to the extent that, the frequency that you could sort of, notice it. And she tends to use this, I'm not sure how you call this rhetoric device, but when you have a list that is kind of like run off without any commas, just to kind of show how the stream of consciousness-esque dialogue in your head just kind of run off and drift. She uses that a lot as well. There's what I would call lists without commas. If you know the name, let me know in the comments below. But she uses that a lot in this novel as well. So I would say that is kind of like my minor critique on this novel. There are also other ways this book is a little bit overwritten. It may feel a little too long, but otherwise I think that the content, the story, the ideas, those are really wonderful. I particularly love how blunt this book is. So, going to the third book, I have a book by a 19th century Russian writer named Karolina Pavlova. It's called A Double Life, and this book was translated from Russian to English by Barbara Heldt. So this book is, the story is set in 19th century, amongst the aristocratic circle in Russia. So central to this novel, we have this character, Cecily, who is a young woman of marriageable age. Cecily is at that stage of her life where her mother is trying to find her a suitable husband, and by suitable, I mean rich, wealthy. And this is pretty much something that Cecily expects in her life, as a young woman at that age, at that particular time period in Russia. So her mother, Vera Vladimirovna, is busy trying to shape Cecily. She is well-intentioned, but she's a bit of a smother in how she tries to shield Cecily, how she tries to protect her so that Cecily is able to be matched with a rich and wealthy husband. Now, Cecily, she has her sights on one particular man named Dmitry Ivachinsky, but however, Dmitry is not super rich. Dmitry's friend, Prince Victor, is Vera's target as Cecily's husband. But at the same time, Cecily's friend, Olga, and her mom, they are also targeting Prince Victor as well, because Prince Victor is like really rich. Everyone wants him. So this novel would eventually sort of develops into this plot of machinations in which Olga and her mother, they are not malicious in any way, because Olga knows that Cecily is not interested in Prince Victor anyway, so they sort of start to plot something in order for Cecily to be matched with Dmitry behind Cecily's mother, behind Vera's knowledge. So in terms of that plot, I find it quite interesting and also fairly entertaining. There are parts that can feel quite humorous as well. So that is kind of like the core of the story, how how this whole matchmaking drama happens here between Cecily and the man that she likes, and how Cecily's friend and the mother's friend is trying to set her up with this man. It's just really amusing. Now, another interesting thing about this book is that this book is written both in prose and in poem verses. The author, Karolina Pavlova, was also a poet, and every chapter of this book would have a prose component and a poem component. Basically, every chapter would end in a poem. So the chapters usually go like this. So it would start in a prose component where it tells us the story, conventional, and then towards the end we would go to this part where we learn more about Cecily, about her inner thoughts through verses. And so this sort of reveals another side to Cecily. Notice I didn't really mention Cecily's own kind of like motivation and drive earlier when I was talking about the description of this novel. And basically this is where we learn more about Cecily. Cecily feels trapped. She feels like she is not living up to her potential in this book. She wants a life that has more adventures, has more challenges, where she could pursue more intellectual things. And from these poems, which tells us the inner thoughts of Cecily, we kind of learn, or it is rather implied, that Cecily has this literary aspirations of becoming a poet herself, but because of her station in life, where basically the only goal that she has to strive forward is to get a rich husband, she doesn't really have this kind of wide opportunity for her to pursue this kind of aspirations. And while this entire novel is about the comedy that happens between Cecily and her friend and other women in this aristocratic circle, we also learn more about how Cecily, through the poems in each chapter, how she feels trapped, how she feels like she has to live in a very boxed environment, where she herself is boxed into a particular role that she has to abide by without any, without resisting. Basically, she has been taught, it has been grilled into her that this is how a woman should act, and inside, internally, she's trying to fight that, but outside, she doesn't really show it. So I would say the prose component of this book shows who Cecily is from the outside, while through the lines of the poems, it shows who Cecily is on the inside. That leads to this novel having this kind of strange vibe, I would say. It's not strange in a bad way, but it's strange in a way that you have this prose part of the story being kind of happy and humorous, but then when it goes to the poem, it feels a little bit bleak. Now, it doesn't really dramatically shift from happy to bleak, black and white. There are going to be some hints within the prose itself that sort of suggests how Cecily feels a little bit depressed, a little bit sad about the life that she expects. But it is in the lines of the verses that she begins to feel kind of this minor sense of despair over the life that she would probably have to experience. So I find that this juxtaposition between happy and sad to be quite interesting. Yeah. Now, another thing is that I actually read the translator's introduction before reading the story of this. Before reading the story, the novel, and I'm not sure. Maybe it's because of that my perception on the story itself is colored by my reading of the introduction. The introduction by Barbara Heldt, it tells us more about the life of the writer Karolina Pavlova. So basically it's about how Karolina Pavlova was not an appreciated writer and a poet because she was a woman, and it was literally all about, because she was a woman, she was not respected, she was not highly acclaimed. People didn't really appreciate her works. People diminished her because of the fact that she was a woman. And aside from her literary career, which wasn't really, booming as it should be, it had some success, but it didn't really as successful as it should be. Her personal life was not really great as well. Her husband married her for money, and also when she died, she sort of died without friends and family, and the way that her life was portrayed was kind of bleak. And maybe that's why when I was reading the novel, there is this parallel that I could sense between the story of Cecily in the novel and also the real life of Karolina Pavlova. And especially when you read the lines of verses, this kind of it screams in despair. Which was honestly made them even sadder. I personally think this book is probably one of the best books you could read for women in translation, because this is kind of exactly one of those things that women in translation wants to highlight, right? So I highly recommend A Double Life. I think it's a wonderful novel. I gave it 3 stars because I wasn't really I don't know. Now that I talk about it with you, I would probably revise it to 4 stars. So you see, that's how, just one of the ways star ratings fall apart. So yeah, forget the fact that I gave all of these books 3 stars. Maybe A Double Life should have a 4 stars for me. I don't know. But who cares? It's just star rating. what's more important is how it makes how it made me feel, how it makes you feel, and honestly, based on how A Double Life made me feel, I think y'all should read it. Y'all should give, Karolina Pavlova the flowers that she deserves. I hope, this author could become more famous. So, yeah, that's it for this video. And until then, take care. Thanks for watching. I'll return with more books, hopefully. And since it's August, I target to have at least one translated work by a female author in every recent reads, at least in August. So stay tuned for that. Until then, take care. Thanks for watching. Bye.